This could go so many ways tonight.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us at this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. It's so great to see such a turnout tonight. I think it's all for you, Mrs. Schaefer. So Nicole Schaefer, you're going to...
Mrs. Osborne.
Yeah, Mrs. Osborne. I'm looking... There's... Yes, I know.
He's looking at me.
I know, I'm looking at you. I'm thinking we have a Pledge of the Allegiance.
Yes, I do,
special
and I
guest
brought
tonight.
two friends with me this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce two of Blue Ridge Primary's finest students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. First of all, I would like Danny Malamus to come see me. And Danny is a kindergarten student in Mrs. Blake's kindergarten class. As you can see, he has a contagious smile and always comes to school as an enthusiastic learner. Here's what Mrs. Blake has to say about Danny. He loves science and always adds great information during science lessons. He loves science so much he came dressed as a marine biologist for career day. He is energetic and curious, two traits that will serve him well throughout life. He is constantly searching for new knowledge and information while being a kind and caring member of our classroom and our school. And our next student is Alexa Rinker. Now, Alexa set the bar high tonight for how we should be dressed, so I don't know if I'm quite up to snuff this evening, but Alexa is a first grader in Mrs. Kane's class. Alexa is a thinker. She walks in each day with new ideas and is ready to share them. She is friendly and an all-around positive student, and here is what Mrs. Kane says about Alexa. She's a very enthusiastic learner and always takes pride in her work. She is an outstanding reader and loves to share about what she has read. One of Alexa's favorite topics to write about in her journal during free choice time is about the movie Inside Out. And I have to tell you, when we got our Inside Out Sminsels, she was all over it that day. She was so excited. And I don't know if Mom has any money left since we've gotten those. But she's an absolute pleasure to have at school and in class. At this time, we ask you to stand as we lead you in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both for leading us tonight, for being here. Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. Mrs. Osborne, thank you for running us ragged yesterday. That was a lot of fun.
All well worth it.
Sure was. We have some, thank you all for being here.
So you brought their own cheering section, yeah.
We have
I wish I'd thought of that.
we have some business signings.
We certainly do. We actually have three business partners to honor today, two with Driswood and one with Wright Denny, and Mr. Soltis is going to make the appropriate introductions.
I will, and I don't know how I can follow those two great kids, but I will do my best. We have some great people with us today that are going to sign up as business partners. You can see we have three partnerships to sign tonight. We'll start with BCT, Bank of Charlestown, the Carneysville branch, who's going to be represented by Miss Debbie Height and Miss Christy Hadley. They're going to be signing with Driswood, which of course is represented by Miss Osborne. So if you all go up here at the table and sign on the dotted line, we'd appreciate it. If you want to stand up there.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I know we're very excited to have a new partnership, and I know they've already got some plans for working with Driftwood, and maybe one of them, or Ms. Osborne, can tell us a little bit about those plans.
Absolutely. First, Bank of Charlestown is very pleased to be working with Driftwood Elementary. One of the great programs that we offer to the school is Bank Day with the students. It's a free Sun School savings account that teaches the students the value of the savings. So that's one of the programs that Ms. Debbie's already implemented with the school, with Ms. Osborne. So we're excited to see what else the future holds for us with the school.
And we have over 50 children enrolled in that program. It's very exciting. We actually, every time they come, they have more children come up to them, and Debbie sends home more information. So we're enrolling as we continue to grow. But Bank of Charlestown has been a partner with us. They've provided us with different donations. They've come to our back to school nights as our business partner and working with us as our school bank. So we're very excited to have this partnership.
Well, we talked a lot about literacy at this table, and the school system and financial literacy is important too. So thank you for starting our students early.
You're welcome. We're pleased again to be with you guys. Thank you. Thank you.
And Ms. Osborne, might as well just go ahead and stay there, because the next partnership is going to be with State Farm Insurance, Tammy Serbaw's agency. Representing them is going to be Miss Lisa Alberti, and of course Miss Osborne for Driftwood. Now, Miss Serbaugh and State Farm has partnered with several schools, and have always done some nice things working with the business partners.
And I can share a little bit about State Farm. They have walked the path with us since before we had a home. They actually partnered with us just out of the kindness of their hearts when we opened up at San Michael's. They were there with us. They provided some instructional materials, crayons. We had our, if you remember, we had our kindergarten registration there because we were homeless. And they provided concessions for the parents, activities. They brought in their mascot. They had coloring books. So we have a long history with them, but we're just making it official now. So, and Lisa actually is one of our wonderful bus drivers that works there part-time. So she is, walks the steps with us every day to make sure our children are safe and arrive at school happy and healthy.
We're very excited about it, so I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Boy, Mr. Cable, that brings back some memories, doesn't it?
I often get asked, would you do it again? And I was like, no. Thank you.
And one more partnership, certainly not the least of the three, is with Wright Denny Elementary, who's going to be represented by Miss Joyce Fisher. We're going to be signing up with Spectrum Martial Arts Academy, represented by Mr. Ray Miller and his brother, Mr. Seth Miller. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not seated yet. Hold on. Having the same trouble with chairs you are. So my brother and I are actually teachers. I used to teach in Berkeley County. I'm now working at Starbase Martinsburg. Raymond just recently graduated. He's a substitute right now in Jefferson County. And we started up our martial arts school about 3 months ago. We have both adult and kid classes. We teach kind of a modern mixed style martial arts. So it's MMA without the aggression. We want to mix things together for fitness and for health and for self-defense. So we focus a lot on jiu-jitsu and stuff. And more relevant to the school, we have actually an academic tutoring section because we're both teachers. So we are going to be doing an after-school session every single day of the week. We hope to be able to get some Wright Denny students in there, give some opportunity to students, and we also have ideas for incentives for students performing classes, getting free classes, free equipment, patches, stuff like that from our school as well.
I'm very excited to be partnering up with Wright Denny Intermediate. I had the pleasure of actually doing my student teaching there during my final year in college. So I had a blast working there, and I'm really excited to be working with these guys and hopefully, offering our services and growing together as a part of the community.
We're excited to have you. The students, he's a large crowd following. I do cafeteria duty, and if they raise their hand and I come towards them, they put it down. If he's in the room, wait, sorry. So yes, he's quite popular. He's an excellent teacher too.
Well, it sounds like an outstanding partnership. Thank you for coming to the school system in this manner.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a round of applause to all of our business partners. Thank you. Dr. Gibson, we have recognition of some of our outstanding teachers and administrators.
Yes, sir. In particular, we are recognizing two, only one of whom could be here tonight, of our leaders who participate in the Principal Leadership Academy as distinguished scholars. And the incomparable Mr. Blanc is going to share information with you about that.
Don't confuse me with this distinguished scholar. Bring this distinguished scholar over here is Mr. Ian Hillman, and all of our new principals throughout the state have to go to the Principals Academy, and I think there's 3 sessions during the year. You go for 2 or 3 day sessions, and there was about 150 this past year that went, and out of those 150, there were about 10 of those were selected as distinguished scholars in that Leadership Academy, and that's based on, I guess, on projects that you do. Is that correct? Each participant selects a project, or they get in a group and do a project, and your project was distinguished enough that you were recognized. Tell us real briefly, 30 seconds, what your project was about.
So last year at Harper's Ferry, Mr. Vandell, Ms. Moss, and I developed a walkthrough template that we used, and it was able to guide instruction, and we used the data from those walkthroughs that we were able to do. We brought those into our curriculum meetings, and we were able to kind of make any changes, show the teachers, what we saw, and make changes from there.
So by walkthrough, you were walking through the classrooms?
Walking through the classrooms and kind of going through a checklist of things that we were looking for, and then presenting the data of everything that we gathered in those meetings.
Very good. Well, we're real excited to have you with us. What to say? Congratulations, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Brock was unable to join us tonight, but we'll present hers at a later meeting, okay? And next we have, this month, we actually had a tie. We had 2 winners for the Spirit of Jefferson Awards. So would you like to talk about the 2 individuals who were nominated, Mr. Jenkins?
Mr. Jenkins?
I wrote a little statement because they told me, they said wing it, and I said I'm not going to do that. So I like to write things down so I can keep my thoughts straight. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Gibson and Board of Education members, 2 of South Jefferson Elementary's finest employees. Miss Buffy Manzik has been teaching for 25 years as a first grade teacher and currently serves as a reading interventionist at South Jefferson. Miss Juanita Smallwood, has been employed as a special education aide at South Jefferson for the past 8 years. And in 2014, she was selected as the Jefferson County Service Person of the Year. The reason these 2 dedicated employees are being recognized tonight is for always putting students first and for always going above and beyond for our school system, for South Jefferson, and for me as the principal. This beginning of the school has presented challenges that I could not have handled without the commitment and dedication of these 2 ladies. They serve as role models for others to follow. They both are always willing to do what is asked of them, and they always agree to do what is best for our students. The words "I can't" are not in their vocabulary. I hope they both know how much I appreciate their efforts. Sometimes a simple thank you is not enough. Thank you again, and congratulations on your recognition tonight, and I thank you for making our school a positive, student-centered environment for all.
Get your certificate and have your picture taken with the wheelchair.
That's working well there. Thank you. But we can, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, did he not?
Well, I feel like I know these two very well. So nice to see you again. Congratulations, congratulations. Did you run in the Freedoms?
No, not this year. Next year.
I mean, I want you to hold your certificate up there.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There you go.
Let me go on.
Great. Congratulations, thank you again. And let's get this gentleman too.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Like I said, gentlemen.
Oh, sorry. I am all over there. I need a bubble.
I'm gonna tape out a place on the floor for you.
Can we get a bigger room for
Some accommodations. You make me nervous standing right there.
I'll move out from under and be in a minute.
And now?
Yes, sir.
We have a presentation?
We're very excited. We have a very positive presentation. Dr. Sherry Hoff is here to introduce one of our schools that had a tremendous amount of success with raising their attendance rates and a good model for others to follow, and great opportunity for us to talk about.
You've said it all.
Oh, well, yeah, I love to steal people's thunder. It's a gift. I'm sorry.
Yes. Harper's Ferry has worked for years to improve their attendance. They've worked very closely with the families and the students, knowing that we can't do this without a combined effort of everyone. Last year, many of our schools struggled to hit the 95%. Harper's Ferry came in just under that at 94.62. And they determined this year, based on a lot of information, a lot of data and discussion, that they were going to challenge their students and staff to raise the bar. I'm going to let Ms. Moss and Mr. Vandell, the two administrators, explain what they have done. Ladies?
Well, I'll just start out real quick and then I'll let Ms. Moss explain all the data and figures and numbers and stuff. I think when Dr. Hoff was talking about working with the families and, how our school works closely with our community. And I mean, I've obviously been there a long time. A lot of our teachers have been there a long time. So I know the families intimately, a lot of them. And, a lot of times it helps when you can put a personal touch on it and you can talk to them about what's going on or what an issue may be with the student. And I think we have a great staff that kids, generally want to come to school anyway. We've always had good attendance, but we've really been able to ramp it up this year thanks to the efforts of Ms. Moss and some ideas that she came up with and our students. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thanks. When we were posed with a challenge from the state superintendent about attendance and the importance of attendance, Mr. Vandell and I looked at some attendance data, and when he took the role of principal, attendance became in my realm. And after our first month of last year, and we kind of looked at it, it was close to what Mr. Vandell was doing, but I wanted to do a little bit better than what Mr. Vandell was doing before then, because we like to be a little competitive at Harper's Ferry. So we took some stuff from the Attendance Works website, we took some information from our kids and our students, and the girls are going to talk a little bit about a couple things, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the data and the numbers. Just take a couple minutes to tell you about some of the stuff. So girls, if you want to talk about those banners that you're holding and what we do, you're more than welcome to do that, and then I'll help you fill in any holes, okay?
Each week at Harper's Ferry, your first period class is recognized for the most attendance. And each class gets an award and they get the banner hung on their class for the rest of the next week.
Do you want to talk about the perfect attendance party at lunches?
At lunches, you get to eat with Mr. Vandell and Mrs. Moss if you have perfect attendance for the year. And you also get awards for each semester. if you have improved or better attendance.
Right. Good job, girls. So the signs of the banners that the girls are holding, our art teacher, our FACS teacher, and myself worked on. The kids kind of gave us some of the hashtag ideas. We're trying to catch the kids, and do some things that are relevant to them. So we take attendance every Thursday through Wednesday, do a data pool from that, the number of students versus the percentage of students that are absent, and Friday morning I walk around and award those little treats to the classes, and it actually is a great competition between the building, and the kids see me walk past and you can see a class go, oh no, or I can tease them a little bit. This week we had 8 classrooms that were in the running, and we had to award it to 8 different classrooms. We've usually had about 3 or 4. Our first month of school, we had 246 students with perfect attendance, so we were able to give them all something, and at the lunches, we turned the cafeteria into a little bit of a romper room with some helicopters and some little toys and some noisemakers, and the kids really loved it. He wasn't there that day. The kids really loved it, and they were excellently behaved when they left the cafeteria because they know what we expect, and they were talking about it, their parents were talking about it. On Friday, we were able to provide 156 students with a certificate of achievement for improved attendance for the second half of the 9 weeks, so 156 students improved their attendance. And actually, our teachers' attendance is improved, I think. I haven't looked at the numbers previously, but today was the 3rd time that I was going to be able to walk around our building that 100% of our professional staff was in the building. And I think it's one of the, just a little caveat that walks underneath that, our teachers are on board, they're competing against each other in the hallways, and I think with them seeing that we're pushing it for students, we have to practice what we preach. And if we're telling our kids to be in first period, our teachers want to be in first period. And so the little Chick-fil-A coupons that they've gotten, or the little lollipop that comes around to them at 8 o'clock in the morning saying, great job teachers, thank you for being here, I think has increased our staff attendance as well. So that's kind of an added bonus to getting our kids to come to school. So thank you, girls. You did a very good job.
I'd like to thank our 3 students. This is Taylor Corcoran representing the 6th grade. This is Isabel Charbonneau representing the 7th grade. And this is Skyen Harris representing the 8th grade. So thank you.
Hold those up a little bit higher for pictures,
Don't need them
girls.
around your head like we talked about earlier. I can't see that hashtag, the yellow one. Okay, perfect. Very good.
As you walk down the hall, you'll see colored posters hanging on the walls. Those were all produced by students at Harper's Ferry promoting positive attendance to school.
Perfect.
Well, thank you all, and thank you, ladies, for your focus on this, making this a focused effort at your school. You can see it's really turning some dividends.
Thank you, and thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us tonight.
We appreciate it.
Great to see all these exciting activities going on in our schools.
Yes, sir, it is. We've had many exciting activities. So, assume we're at the superintendent's comments portion. So,
Please.
Speaking of exciting activities, one that you and I participated in just yesterday, the fundraiser over at Jefferson High for Wildwood and Driftwood. That had great community support. It was a wonderful event, and we believe that both schools have made over $2,000, at least in the preliminary look, in terms of bringing in additional funding to support students. I also wanted to just give the board a quick update and a quick shout out to the principals who, at their last principals meeting, as you know, all of the principals worked collaboratively together to set some goals for their schools and for themselves in terms of the instructional bar that they wanted to reach. And much as Ms. Moss was talking about raising the bar for instruction, the principals have really set some high standards for themselves in raising the bar for instruction. And they have been working very, very hard. At the last principals meeting, they went through a gauntlet of some significant data training and working through some data points themselves to be able to guide their staffs, and working through some instructional frameworks from Charlotte Danielson, which really has a very intensive focus on student engagement in the classroom, getting students engaged in the level of instruction, and have challenged themselves to apply that in the classroom, and we're really looking forward to some good results. So kudos to them and the hard work that they've been putting in.
And just for my colleagues on the board, I can attest to the fact that Dr. Gibson has about a 5-inch vertical leap.
And that's only a 4-inch exaggeration.
It was a lot of fun. I see a couple of our stars out there in the audience, led by the Chamber of Commerce representative.
I think Amy Panzarella actually doubled mine in your point total.
I think she did too.
Of the game. So thank you for representing, Ms. Panzarella. I do have a single change to the consent agenda when we get there.
Okay. Next would be action on approval of the minutes of the last regular board meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any clarifications? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Citizens' comments. We have 4 members of the community who've signed up tonight. We appreciate you attending and welcome your comments. We do ask you to limit your remarks to 3 minutes. I believe I will call these and ask you to come to the podium over to our left. Michael Guy.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm here to speak about the bus depot that's going in our backyard. We all know me. It's nice to be here. There's a quote in the paper from Wednesday of September 30th. We didn't just go and buy a piece of land. It's an industrial park. So when you bought your house, you bought next to it. So this was a quote in the paper. Yes, we never denied living next to an industrial park, but we never assumed, or should I say we did assume, which this happens when we assume, that the laws of the county, state of West Virginia would protect us being a resident next to a resident or a industrial area. It just seemed to bother me a little bit that seemed to be pointed at us, that it was our fault of this, that we should have never lived there 13 years ago. The other thing is it also covers in the paper here, there was an intrusion. My wife had sent a letter to the county, to you guys. There was also a comment in the paper here, you would recognize this. Still no action on the intrusion on the border of our properties, our property line. And the only other thing that I have for you, I seem to have time, is the fuel. Fuel is not a good place for this. It's not, to quote Mark Twain, it's never a wrong time to do the right thing.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle.
I'm here for the same reason. I live in the Shiloh subdivision. I'm the vice president of our HOA. And I'm going to ask you to please reconsider burying the fuel tank there at that new bus garage. About a month ago, I talked to the Department of Environment's leaking tank division, and I got a file on the current bus garage at Shenandoah Junction. And before reading the file, I considered a fuel leak to be a remote possibility, a dangerous one, but a remote one. After reading through the file about the leak that happened at Shenandoah Junction and the way it was handled, I consider it a very likely possibility there will be a leak at this garage also. The difference is the people of Shenandoah Junction area are on municipal water. We're on well water. And some things I read in that file was, after a year of ignoring the inspector's request from the Department of Environment, they cited the bus garage there a notice of non-compliance. That's basically a last straw type of action. Nobody's allowed to deliver fuel to you without a $10,000 a day fine if they do. I also found out that test wells were drilled on the property to see if there was any water table contamination from the leak. Now, state law says the wells need to be capped after 60 days. They were left open for 3 years. If there had been another leak, that would have acted as a conduit straight to the water table of that area. And there is one well in that area, and it's Jefferson High School. And I also found out that the soil samples done to determine what kind of contamination was actually happened there were the recommendations of the DEP were ignored by the Board of Ed. And in the words of the inspector, he said, only one soil sample from a pile as big as a house was submitted for laboratory analysis. And the use of PID field screening on diesel-contaminated soils is questionable, especially considering 8 months had lapsed since the excavation and disposal and the submitting of one sample for laboratory analysis. And that sample may not have sufficiently represented the quantity of soils involved. Now, that soil was used as fill dirt at the baseball diamond there at Jefferson High. And just through the file, I see one time after another where the DEP recommends something, the board or the people at the bus garage area ignore it or don't follow their recommendations. Now, how does that make me feel as a homeowner, knowing you're moving in next door to me and burying 40,000 gallons of diesel? If that were to leak, and here's my biggest concern, the way they found this was they said, now state law says any potential leak needs to be reported within 24 hours. And in the file it says the first indication that there may have been a release of petroleum product to the environment was when gauging measurements performed on one of the 10,000 gallon diesel underground storage tanks did not correspond with input gallonage. After a second month of non-corresponding readings, a leak was reported to the DEP. Now, am I going to have to wait months, possibly having my family, my neighbor's family, drinking cancer-causing substances in our well water? That's a real concern for me. I don't want my family drinking cancer-causing substances like what I've read through this file, the many different chemicals that are in diesel and gasoline. I can't afford to have my well tested every week to be sure there's not a problem. And
Mr. Doyle, we'd ask you to wrap up.
let me just finish this up with, I also agree with what my neighbor said about, I read that quote in the paper and that really upset me. I've lived there over 15 years. I don't know anybody that's ever complained about that industrial park. But every other resident of that park has followed county guidelines. If you had followed the county guidelines, we would have likely not have known you were even building there. But you didn't. You ignored all of it and said that that law didn't apply to you. No offsets, none of the laws were followed. If you had followed them, we wouldn't have known and we wouldn't have complained. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
And Mr. Doyle, thank you for providing me by email the information that you just referenced regarding the existing fuel tank. We will, and I'll certainly share that with my colleagues.
Thanks for taking the time to review that. I hope that makes you reconsider the tank.
Mr. Rumor?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Derek Romer. I am a resident of the Preserve of Barleywood. That's off of 51 in Charlestown. Over the last 2 years, I've been working with my HOA representatives as well as the Jefferson County Board of Education in an attempt to try to add a bus stop in my development. I believe I've given many points of why it would be to our advantage to have a bus stop added. So where I reside on a cul-de-sac. It's approximately 3 miles off of a main road. The nearest bus stop is roughly about a mile from my house. In order to get to my bus stop, or my children's bus stop, I should say, my children would have to walk through the dark due to the zoning in our county. My child has to board a school bus at 6:30 in the morning to go to Wildwood. So it is dark when she leaves for school. Very unsafe. I do work in D.C. I do try to take her when I can. So does my wife. She's a teacher in Loudoun County. Unfortunately, when you work out of the county, it's very hard to always make sure that your child is taken care of. In the mornings, we pretty well have it under control, but when they get home, it's another story. So I've sent numerous amounts of correspondence to the board. The board has seen my correspondence, hopefully, that I sent last year. when I was discussing this with Mr. Willingham, Mr. Boylan, Ms. Wall. I believe I got a return on your email, Mr. Cable, that your address didn't match up with what was on your website, or the Jefferson County Board of Education's website, I should say. However, we're still fighting the fight after 2 years. The conditions for these children aren't safe. It makes all the parents go to an area where it wasn't designated for parking. Parents have to park in the streets. They have to stand in the streets. Children have to stand in the streets. The Board of Education refuses to discuss this with me. And I think that's my main concern, is that no one has, in the 2 years, no one has reached out to me. They haven't called me. They haven't attempted to make a meeting with me. I did receive some follow-ups from Mr. Carter. Chris Carter was the only one that did respond to me. However, it's the same story, that in order for the bus to go to the proposed bus stop, the bus would have to navigate a cul-de-sac. They say that the bus would have to make a backing maneuver, and that statistically it is unsafe, or it's not as safe to keep going forward as it is backwards. I do have a security camera set up, and I did catch a full-size Jefferson County bus. We have a special needs student in our development. One day they did bring her home, and it caught the full-size bus making a turn easily in a cul-de-sac without making a backing maneuver. I did send stills of this in my last correspondence. I did not send it to the Board of Education. I did send it to Dr. Gibson as well as Mr. Carter. I do have a copy if anybody would like to see it. But it does illustrate the bus making a full continuous turn, and I also have video of it if anybody would like to see that. They claim that the bus is unable to do it. I have video evidence that it is able to do it. And the other thing is, and if they did make a backing maneuver, is it truly unsafe? So the last correspondence I sent back, Mr. Carter gave me the excuse that it would be statistically unsafe to make a backing maneuver. And then shortly afterwards, I responded, and I noticed that I got a reply that Mr. Carter, I guess he is retired. I sent an email back to Dr. Gibson asking that she reconsider or send it to the appropriate person who is now handling this. Have not heard anything from anyone. So pretty much I'm here to express my frustration with this whole system. I'm trying to do something good for my children. Not only my children, but 90% of our children in that neighborhood. 90% of the children that go to Jefferson County reside in the back part of that development. It only makes sense to do what's best for the majority of the people. So I'm asking that the Board of Education review this, as well as Dr. Gibson, and I believe Mr. Puglisi is the new transportation chief. Please review it, reconsider. Please reach out to me. I would love to discuss this more. No one has reached out to me, and I think that's the most frustrating part. 2 years has elapsed. It hasn't made anyone's lives easier. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rumor. We can certainly understand your frustration. Could you tell me again the location?
It's the preserve at Barleywood. That's off of 51, close to Tuscaloosa Hills and Locust Hills.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
And Kelly Gallahan?
Hi, I'm going to piggyback on Derek. Derek and I are co-chairs for the Preserve of Barleywood bus portion of the subdivision. I have been working on this for 3 years, trying to get a bus stop to the back of the neighborhood for the kids in the back of the neighborhood, because 90% of those kids in that neighborhood are in the back of the neighborhood. I live on the one part of this subdivision that is a dead end. The kids, it is a stop, they can get on the bus, there's no through traffic. Where the bus stop is now, it's all through traffic. We've had bus runners, we've had, cars parked over, kids running out from between cars. It's a very dangerous situation for these children. And we just want the kids to be safe. Not only is it a dangerous situation with the cars, but we've got bobcats, coyotes, and everything else running through our yards over there. And, for his kids to walk all the way back to the back of the, to be honest, I pick the kids up. I go to the bus stop every day and pick the kids up. Honestly, I'm moving. It's not a benefit to me, but it will be a benefit to all the other children in my neighborhood. And I feel strongly that we need to help these children have a safer environment on and off that bus. and I don't feel that it's unsafe for that bus to go back there and do that circle. I'm asking that just give it a shot. Let our bus drivers try that circle. If they can't do it, then maybe there isn't another option than to do what we're currently doing. But if they can make that circle, then please give us that stop. So.
Thank you. Thank you both for bringing this to our attention. Ms. Harner, did I miss anyone? I think that's it. Again, thank you for coming to speak before the board. Madam Superintendent, consent agenda.
Yes, sir. You'll, aside from the change to number 1, which the person accepted and then subsequently refused after accepting, we need to remove number 13. We held interviews for the coordinator of Human Resources on Friday, and we had placed that there as a place marker should we be successful. And at this time, that is not the case, and we need to remove that item. We do not have someone to recommend for appointment.
Okay. Do you have a motion to consider the consent agenda? So moved. Second? Second. Questions? If not, all in favor of consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. And I believe we have a couple of
We have
introductions.
some introductions, we
Yes.
certainly do. So, Mr. Dingus.
Please, Mr. Dingus.
We are very, very happy to introduce Mr. Chuck Puglisi. I did good? All right. I've been practicing. This man is my, just so happy to see. I asked other people if they would even do this.
So are we as a result of tonight.
Well, we can discuss some of that. You don't hear the whole thing. So, but Mr. Puglisi comes with us with 21 years of experience as the Director of Transportation in Frederick County, Virginia. He also had 3 years in Boston City Schools, and he had 6 years in Albuquerque, New Mexico as the Director of Transportation. He also had, and I'm still missing what, 6 years someplace else.
I'll lose track.
You lose track at that point. But we're so happy to have him, someone who really knows transportation and has all those informational things. We appreciate greatly him applying and being our Director of Transportation.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to be welcomed with these issues. It's my focus to try to get things resolved as soon as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. We have, of course, transportation and the safe transportation of our students is a critical issue, and one that this county and this school system has a great track record of doing very well. We are obviously going through a big transition, at least in facilities, and we welcome your leadership and direction at this time. So, welcome.
Thank you. And if I apologize if I could be excused. I've got a long commute and an early day tomorrow, so I need to.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Those buses move out of there about 5:30.
Yes.
It's early.
I'll try to be there tomorrow morning. Bye.
Mr. Blunt.
It's my pleasure to introduce Sherry McCall Ross as our Jefferson High School principal. That Sherry has degrees from University of North Carolina and Loyola College. Looks like you've authored over about a dozen articles anyway that I've seen published. That extensive educational background throughout the state of Maryland, Anne Arundel County, State Department, Hagerstown Community College, the Kennedy Krieger Institute, and was also awarded as a exemplary organizational change person. So that sounds good. It was all for the good. You made changes that were for the good, which was very good. And I know that just some early talks with Sherry that she mentioned there's a lot of good things out of Jefferson. You know, you see a lot of good people, a lot of things going on that have recognized those things, and that we're real excited to have you on board. And I'll let you say a few words, and won't even put you on a 30-second clock like I did.
Oh, that's great. This time of day I've about run out of words, but I am delighted to be here. I am grateful for the opportunity to serve the Jefferson community. It is very clear that there are many very hardworking, caring people at Jefferson High School, a lot of community pride, a lot of school pride, and I'm delighted to be a part of that and look forward to deepening my understanding of the needs there and serving that community well. So thank you for the opportunity and for the trust that you placed in me. I know it's a big responsibility.
Well,
you have a day starting tomorrow early too, so don't feel like you have to stay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here,
Absolutely.
Ms. Ross.
But,
And multiple levels.
and we know you've been on the job and you've been very busy, but we do appreciate you taking the time. The board wanted to just officially welcome you and look forward to working with you
Thank
in
you.
our community.
Thank you very much, and for extending the confidence sight unseen, so to speak. So, thank you. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Let's see, Dr. Gibson, old business, we have none?
No, sir.
Okay, new business.
We are seeking board approval for graduation dates for the 2015-16 school year at Shepherd University. Thursday, May 26th at 7 p.m. for Washington High, and Friday, May 27th at 7 p.m. for Jefferson High School. As some background information, we did an analysis of costs in these difficult fiscal times. We wanted to ensure that we were making the best decisions. So we actually did a cost analysis, and thank you very much to both Mr. Dingus and Ms. Morone, who put a lot of work into this. But breakdown of everything that it would cost for rental and for security and for all the items that we would need were we to run the graduations here in Jefferson at the respective high schools versus what it costs at Shepherd University. And there was a significant, quite frankly, cost savings to run it at Shepherd University. It would cost just under $12,000 per school, $11,990 per school, for the equipment and rental, staffing, security that we would need to stage our own graduations with the same materials, whereas it costs us $4,041 per school to rent that same level of service from Shepherd University. So just so that folks know, because if you don't have all of the background information, it's very easy for folks to come and say, oh, well, you guys are just spending money on that big fancy place over at Shepherd University. And quite frankly, that's something. They have the facilities, they do it well, they already have the equipment, so they can have a greatly reduced cost because they do a lot of that, ceremony, the ramps and things like that.
We may have some questions. Can we get a motion to consider this?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
I'm not complaining that it's not Memorial Day weekend, considering I've graduated 2 students already on a Memorial Day weekend. But just kind of wondering how we got to the place of deciding Thursday, Friday over a weekend.
That's a great question. We actually had an enormous amount of discussion regarding 2 things. First of all, last year was the first year that West Virginia had their full must-go 180 days in a school year, regardless, with snow days. And there is a provision in the West Virginia Code that states that graduation cannot be more than a week before the end of school. Last year, the state pretty much, my understanding is they were very lenient and had a great number of, I don't know if they actually called them waivers, but they recognized that because of their 180 requirement, that school systems ended up, because they'd already set their graduation dates, and with snow days they went far in. So graduations were being held 3 and sometimes 4 weeks before school actually ended, which quite frankly doesn't always bode well for attendance, quite frankly, among students. And so truthfully, a lot of this was instructionally based, that looking at our calendar and the typical number of snow days that we have and when we could expect to graduate, that this would get us as close to within a week of actual end of school. With snow days, availability with Shepherd University, so.
It's a crapshoot.
It is. It is.
We had heard, now only, I did see one comment when this was on the agenda that had expressed some concern that we had already, or it had, parents were already under the impression that graduation dates had been set for this year. Have we had a chance to look at that?
Well, I have not confirmed that for the, Washington High did not have that posted, had not posted that anywhere, and the only information that had been given to those parents is that we were proposing the May 26th date to the board once we had confirmation from Shepherd. I have the draft parent-student handbook from Jefferson, which has TBD under graduation date, and have not been able to locate a copy because it's not on their website that I can find. But we will confirm whether or not that was actually in their handbook, and if that was the case, we will make sure that we get a clear, unambiguous notice out to any of the parents who received misinformation.
Either way, there'll be a new communication to.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Designation of referendum funds. This would be, are we discussing from table game revenues?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, please do. Mr. Dingus is going to provide some contextual information for the request, both in terms of the current level of funding existent in referendum funds, as well as guide your attention to 2 attachments that you have regarding background information for the requested purchase of 2 maintenance vehicles that have snow removal capability.
So could I just ask for a clarification then before we, so this isn't about the designation of all referendum funds and how we're allocating. This is about a specific request for funds.
Yes, sir. My understanding, based on discussions with Ms. Marone and our review of the spring when the budget came before the board, the table referendum funding requests were made as part of that. And at the time, the board was not in full agreement with all of the items that were designated on there. And they asked at that time, based on my understanding, for the school system to come back with individual requests as needed for referendum funds. That was my understanding. Thank you, Ms. Guerra. So we are returning with both that request and with data and information for you to make an informed decision regarding that request.
Okay. Thank you.
We always start with 1 Jefferson because that's where we're going to try to be always, is together and work together as we go in it. Basically, referendum funding is in the board packet, page 64. When we go through the board packet, there's a referendum funding leaflet. The current balance in there is $1.2 million, almost $1.3 million. A lot of that is already set aside, and we understand that, and we know as maintenance when we're requesting something like 2 used trucks. And we haven't bought any trucks yet, and that's why we're requesting used vehicles. We'll go out and try to find the best 2 used vehicles we can have because we need them for snow. The snow, without these vehicles, our snow removal will be very slow. We have 2 vehicles that we've had in the past, and it's on your chart there, that you notice that the repair of those vehicles themselves cost well more than the vehicle cost. At one point, and we looked them all up on Kelly Blue Book, of course, to get a real price as to what these vehicles were worth. I was surprised how little these vehicles were worth, but if you start looking at some of the numbers, 2003, 2002, we got a 99 in there, you know, they're very old vehicles, and some of them have great amounts of mileage on them. The frame has damage, and the one needs a head. So in that situation, it's very, very difficult. It's a $5,000 repair of a $2,000 vehicle. So it doesn't really make sense. That's why we were trying to get the money for these kind of vehicles. We also have the same problem with the second vehicle. It needs an engine block replaced, about $5,700, and it's worth about $1,500. So, you know, we will be still selling them, hopefully getting $500 a piece or something to add back. And if it's not what we would get from scrap, we just won't sell them and we'll scrap them ourselves. And we'll get the scrap price, because these vehicles at this point are too expensive to repair. Plus, it just doesn't make any sense to do such. We've given you also how long it takes to move snow, and these numbers are for this area by trusted source. And when they check this trusted source, you can see it's a very long period of time. Remembering that we have, 100 acres or better that we're moving snow on, because Washington High School is a big place. And we do appreciate greatly the dump truck that we had gotten in earlier this year. Again, that dump truck was only replaced because it has a crack in the frame. And having a crack in the frame, you can't drive it, you can't put a sticker on it. The same thing is true with these 2 trucks. If they are not replaced, even if they are replaced, we can't sticker these trucks. We can't give them a license to drive because they're not in good enough shape at this point.
So what are you then recommending?
Recommending that we would receive $50,000 to the maintenance department and the transportation, we're working together to get 2 snow trucks used so that we can lower the money. They'd be more expensive and they take a lot longer to get. If we get a truck from the state bid, which is a great deal and always is, it took us 5 months to get the last one from the state bid. It took us a very, very long period of time. They have to order the truck, and if the truck's already, like at certain times they're in production and certain times they're not. And if you get at the end of that when they're not in production, you have a real issue.
So I think to perhaps clarify for the board, the 2 attachments that you have, one is the maintenance vehicle replacement schedule, and it gives you the parameters for replacing vehicles, and it follows the same parameters that the state uses for buses. And it put on there both the year of purchase, the mileage, and the current Kelly Blue Book value of every vehicle that we have, how much mileage they have on them, and if they're damaged and require replacement, what percentage cost a replacement is versus the value of the vehicle. And if the cost of replacement is more than 100% of the value of the vehicle, we certainly, of course, do not recommend replacing it. Having said that, We then also gave you a second sheet, which is the maintenance staff very carefully, using Google Earth and using our maps, plotted out the acreage of all of our existent parking lots. And then, based on the number of vehicles that we have in fleet right now, gave you the estimated amount of time that it would take to clear different inches of snow. So if you will look on there, one of the things that you'll see when you see plow truck productivity, you'll notice currently we have 6 trucks that have snowplow capability. So if there's 2 inches of snow, based on their productivity level, based on the amount of acreage that we have, it will take them approximately 17 and a half hours to clear a 2-inch snowfall. If we have these additional 2 trucks, it will take them 11.7 hours. So part of it is the board's purview to look at those snow depths and simply make some fiscal decisions. In some cases, it's anywhere from 10 to 15 hours difference in how long it would take us to get lots cleared and plowed to open schools back up. And whether or not that fiscal expenditure of the $50,000 out of referendum funding is sufficient for that amount of lessening the amount of time.
So Ralph, the 2 trucks you're looking at replacing is number 208 and 219?
Yes. They're the 2.
And the dump truck is not on here that the other one replaced?
The dump truck, not the one that the other one replaced, no.
Okay.
Because it's no longer being used by maintenance.
Okay.
The new dump truck is 212.
Right, I see that.
And it's the new dump truck, and it's just what it was worth, and it's new. Of course, we had no repairs on it. Also to mention on 219, which is the one we were looking to replace, 219 also has had almost $18,000 over the years spent on it. And it's...
Did we buy that used?
We did buy it used. We did.
Because clearly we don't have any mileage on that truck.
We bought it used, and we bought it from the federal government thinking that we were going to get a really good deal. That truck had been used a great deal in snow and ice, and a great deal of the problems. We did take Benny, at that time, our bus supervisor, with us. He did all the investigation. He looked the truck over and decided it was proper for us to buy it. It wasn't done by the maintenance staff because we don't know trucks as well as transportation's supposed to.
So what 2 trucks are we looking, I'm sorry?
We are looking at 19.
No, what, you said that there was a couple used trucks that you were...
Oh, there's a couple used trucks. They're F-250s or a GMC 250, or we've been looking through there. The trucks that they'll be the ones we're replacing on here are, again, 208 and 219, the units. It'll say unit to the side, which is a Dodge Ram 350. We thought we were getting a really good truck at that point, big, strong truck, but it's had numerous problems.
Ralph, I see a lot of sides to this. First of all, this is an area that we've ignored for quite a long time, so I understand why you're asking for it. We, as we go forward, though, cannot continue to put 1.9 million into maintenance with the smaller amount we're getting from referendum funds. So we are going to have to look at that figure as well as we go forward. Are we going to attempt to move snow this year with our own people and our own plows? We're not going to probably...
We have always attempted to use it with our own people and our own plows. Unless we got a snow that we knew 2 feet came in, and we knew it was going to be 2 feet coming, we sometimes then would, in the past, have gotten a tractor, and a tractor large enough you couldn't park it in this building.
Do we have any snow plows that would possibly fit something we buy? Are we buying trucks and snow plows?
We're trying to find trucks that fit our snow plows that we had for the trucks that we had before. so that we don't have that snowplow cost.
Or where are we looking for these easements?
We have been looking in the local area. Mr. Buzzard has done a great deal of looking through the internet, every place he can look, basically. And we found what we've found, and again, we didn't go over it and check them out completely because we had to make sure that we could get the money anyway. But Mr. Buzzard was checking through there. A great deal of nice trucks. I don't know why, but front row seems to be where most of them were. But we're looking around. We've checked with all of our people here. We've checked local and trying to get one as best we can.
40 to 50,000 miles, something like that?
Yeah, that's my thought is 40,000 miles and 3 years old, 2 years old, and maybe we could find one somebody didn't move snow with a whole lot. Because snow movement makes it very hard on a truck. It wears trucks out. It just does.
Trucks are very difficult to find.
Yeah, we've been looking for a long time to find some.
Yeah. And I think that points to, and one of the reasons we created that maintenance schedule in the first place is that we back ourselves into a corner of making repairs on things that aren't worth it. We're spending money.
We've ignored this for too long.
Right, and so that's why we put the replacement schedule in there in the first place, to start looking at those and replacing them. When you've got something that has 220,000 miles on it and it's 12 years old, know that we're going to have to replace it soon, and go ahead and put those into the budget.
Well, what two need to be repaired to get the six? Is that two?
We had two that have been repaired, or being repaired as we speak. It was Jerry Powell's truck, and I can't tell you which one on here is Jerry Powell's truck, but it was the one we had actually gotten from the county. We got it used from the county, but it's been a very good truck, and it's not had a whole lot of problems. So repairing it made sense. Plus, we shopped around the repair, and we found a way to repair it much cheaper than we thought it was going to be. The repair, they tell me, is now $600. At $600, you've got to make the repair.
So did you say you're looking at possibly 250s?
250s or 350s if possible, but 350s are hard to find in that kind of price range. Almost impossible. I'm looking at Mark.
Yes.
Because pushing snow would be impossible for anything less than a 250. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know
anything
about
less than a
trucks,
250 can't
right?
push snow.
Then we're
It
gonna
can't
end up
really
in the same
help you at
boat.
all.
It's too hard.
No.
It's just not a big enough truck. It's not heavy enough.
Can we get a motion for you, please?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Continue.
I guess my only other thought process is how did we get to the place where, yes, we know that we wanted specifics when we talked about the funding earlier in the year, but how much of a better deal if we go through the state would we have gotten, that now it's going to take us 5 months when we had the conversation 5 months ago, but yet.
Yeah, we could have had them if we would have went on at that point. But until they actually broke, we weren't willing to say
The
that.
difference is, Ralph, if we're going off state bid, we're buying new trucks.
Right.
Right.
Brand new
So
trucks.
we're spending $110,000 then.
That's what I'm wondering, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what they
110
charge us, is
additional
$110,000?
Yeah, well,
For
Not 50,000.
we can get a really good deal, but their good deal's still probably 90 or 100.
So we're not really sure what the deal is we get for
Oh, we did check.
Okay.
I can't remember what the number was, though.
It'll be almost double what.
It was double that to 50. It was, if you go today and look on any lot, a brand new, and we get a better deal than the lot does, but a brand new F550, 350, F350. I looked at one the other day just to see what it cost, and about $57,000. The one I was sitting there looking at. So they're very, very expensive.
Although, to your point, there do appear to be some areas where you take a risk when you purchase used vehicles, that risk isn't existent when you buy a new one and it's under warranty from the state. Hence had we do planning better so that we're not in this situation and you're having to make a decision to say, well, I either spend $50,000 or I say up front that I know we're going to open school a day later or 2 days later than what I would have anticipated, or we have to hire people in to push enough to get us open within a time frame that we feel comfortable with. But it's going to be a trade-off either way.
And that's the choice we're going to have
Right.
at this
Yes,
point.
sir.
To be honest with you, it's a choice between paying someone else to move it so we can get open in a quick enough time, or spending this money.
Buying a couple trucks.
Well, with this way we're looking at it now, though, it's not gonna help us for this year, but for next year, once we get our budget set, we can go ahead and order a truck.
Yes.
Or 2 trucks, or whatever we need.
So does it make sense to just hire someone to do it this year and order the trucks? I mean, I don't know when their production cycle is.
It doesn't really, because when you, as Gary was speaking, we actually, if you look at the chart, 2 trucks is not what we need. It's a whole lot more as we process through. However, it sometimes costs almost that amount. If we get a real big snow, we have to bring in the really big tractors and thing with the snow piles like 12 inches across, and like I said, the wheels are half the size of this, like here. We sometimes spend between $15,000 and $20,000 just having them clear us snow. So
And once again, if we have an extraordinary snow, it doesn't matter. We're not going to purchase enough vehicles for us to be able to clear an epic snowfall. If we get 3 feet of snow, then we get 3 feet of snow and everybody's locked down anyway.
They're not designed to do
We know what the average amount of snowfall that we get in a year is, and we know about how many snow days we typically run, which is part of the work that we're doing for the calendar committee and calculating those days. So you plan for the average and have a sufficient number of vehicles to do that. And as we've shown on here, we can do it with 6 trucks depending on how long you're willing to wait for it.
My suggestion is to go with 2 used trucks, but not just buy 2 used trucks because we need 2 used trucks. I think we're gonna need to be very watchful in what we're buying.
Oh, yeah.
Because we don't, I mean,
Because we
really,
don't
we
want
don't know.
another truck like this one we got.
That one, yeah. I agree with you completely.
And we
I'll
don't
say
really
that
know.
we always
We
say the
got
green
that
truck,
thrown
because
out,
the green truck was always
$50,000, but
If
we
we
don't know
allocate
if
$50,000 and you only find 1 truck, that's okay.
Okay.
In my opinion.
If it was new,
No, but
I'd want that good of a deal.
I just don't want to go out and buy used trucks because we gotta have 2 used trucks.
Right. And we don't know if the plows are gonna fit, and if the plows aren't, and then that means we gotta have the plow, and then.
Well, I would
You know,
certainly
it's a
say
long-
that Mr. Dingus won't buy a truck that the plows won't fit.
Well, that's not-
Unless
that's
there's
always-
something that's an extraordinary deal that makes it worthwhile financially.
Sometimes older trucks like the 99 has a unit that may not fit another truck, but we hope it does. And we have people at the bus garage that tell me they can retrofit a lot of things anymore. It's amazing when you're out the bus garage for those 3 or 4 weeks at
How
5
much
in
you
the
learn.
morning, you get a whole lot more information about the bus garage you never knew you had. But, and it's those things that we all don't realize sometimes. Our bus transportation department actually starts at about 5 in the morning and ends at about 6:30 at night. They really do a lot long, hard days. They split up among their people, but it's long, hard days.
So, Ralph, first of all, thank you for providing this data on replacement costs versus repairs. I think this type of information is more helpful to you than it is to us, but in terms of keeping, you know, getting your arms around replacement schedule.
Yeah.
And helps us make better informed decisions. So thank you all for your efforts on that.
The other piece of this that's happened is how many new schools or facilities have we opened and hardly increased vehicles,
Yeah.
nor maintenance people.
That's true.
The last 3, we've actually lost a maintenance person. We have one less.
Well,
And
we didn't add additional
we don't
trucks
have
or
any-
anything
And we don't
like
have any
that.
additional trucks at the last 3 we built. Like I was in Washington, from Washington on, we haven't added anything. And I don't think we added anything for years before Washington either. I can only attest to that amount of time, because that's the only time I've been.
For the next several budget cycles, we're gonna need to look at placing 1 or maybe 2 trucks in that every year for the next 3, 4, 5 years until we catch up.
Now, have we, just a couple of questions. I don't, is there a market for a commercial fleet like this of leasing versus purchasing?
We have not thought of that until a couple of days ago. Somebody had said something about leasing, and I said, well, we'll have to check and see if it's a better deal, and see what kind of deal we can do with leasing. And I don't know. Most of the time when we've looked to lease a truck before, they've said you can't plow snow with it. You know, like it was part of the deal on the lease that you didn't plow snow with it, because it is what breaks up the trucks.
Sure. And back to the snow, and I think maybe Ms. Skinner alluded to this. I'm sure, you know, right now we need to be focused on this year, but have we, I know a lot of, of course, we're different than a lot of the commercial enterprises in the community that do have contracts with folks with big tractors. Have we evaluated the cost benefit of having those type contracts? Of course, we would have to have a priority.
Right, right. And you got to remember that it's not only right now, but I also can't send plumbers out by themselves anymore because I don't have enough trucks. You know, we end up using them for those reasons too, not just snow. We also have not enough trucks for me to send one plumber to go do a job that he could do by himself. I almost have to send 2 because they fit in, you know, you just don't have enough trucks for it. Not that we still could figure the other thing too.
Okay, so the recommendation again is?
For
$50,000 for 2 trucks, 2 used trucks that are in great shape and have low mileage.
That's what we want.
And have never pushed snow.
There you go. So what we want, Mark, that's exactly it.
At a minimum of a F-250 or whatever.
Oh, yeah, it's gotta be a minimum.
And this would come from table game referendum funds, of which we have a sufficient balance.
Almost 1.3, but you have other things.
And I wish you luck finding 2 trucks.
For $50,000.
We've been looking a long time, and unless the 2 that we were looking at 2 weeks ago, there was about 5 2 weeks ago that we thought were candidates. But
my grandson's been looking for a truck, and he wants an F-250.
They just hold the value so well.
And the cheapest thing he's been able to find that was even worth considering, they wanted $35 for it. You can almost buy a new one for that.
Yeah,
and that's the trouble with trucks; they hold their value and hard to find used ones.
And the one he really liked had 120,000 miles on it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go to Texas. You can get lots of trucks in Texas. Of course, problem.
They probably didn't put a lot of snow down there.
You don't
That's
want
right,
one
they
from
don't push-
Texas now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's gonna be full of water.
Flood certified.
If not, something else.
Heath, what's our next item?
Yes, sir. Next on the agenda, we have approval of a contract for e-therapy services for the period of October 2015 through June 30th of 2016. As we've noted to the board previously, we had contracted out with an organization to provide speech-language pathologists when we were unable to hire enough individuals in-house to perform services. That company, after a signed contract and a significant amount of work with them, are still unable to provide a sufficient number of speech-language therapists. So we then moved to secure what's called e-therapy or telepractice services, which means there is a licensed speech-language pathologist who has their Cs, who has training, and they are in a remote location, and the student with a set of headphones and a camera and a monitor is able in real time to have a teletherapy session with software that has student engagement activities. The student, sometimes through touchscreen, sometimes with the mouse, is doing activities with the speech-language therapist and having conversations with them in order to be able to fill out the service level that we need, because we have a significant number of kids who are not getting a sufficient level of service. We owe it to them, and we have been working very, very tirelessly to try to get those. On the advisement of council, because those type of services were not included in our previous contract, and we've never contracted out for those type of services, and the dollar amount under West Virginia procurement law, we had to go out to request for proposal. We had 3 companies submit that request, respond to that request. You have in your board packet the final tally. The 3 companies were Soliant, eTherapy, and Presence Learning. Of the 3 of those, eTherapy obtained the highest score from the committee. What happens is a group of committee members, which included licensed speech-language therapists, special education administrators, and myself, scored on a series of 5 different areas, including financial competitiveness, their capacity to meet our needs, the technical specifications of the equipment, what type of support they provided, and their overall comprehensive response to meeting our needs. Those were all scored independently and then averaged to get a final score for each one of the respondents, and eTherapy was the chosen respondent. And we are asking for the board's approval of contracting with them for those services.
Can we get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
Pretty close. And,
It was very close. Yes, ma'am. It was. And I will say, I believe that part of the closeness of a couple of those, and part of it is looking down into the specifics of them. Part of the closeness was that one company had the therapist who scored it had a degree of familiarity with them, so they scored higher on sort of comprehensiveness, or I know them, I know their service level, but they are also scored lower on capacity, and quite frankly, the one that scored the highest overall was also the one that scored the highest in terms of capacity. And right now, what we can't fall short on is, oh, you're a great company and I like you and I like your product. I just wish there was enough for all of our kids. We have shorted these kids for a while for a lack of services, despite our best efforts, and we can't continue to fall short in that.
so the one we're choosing, though, is the one that will hold the
That had the
capacity.
highest capacity, yes. In their response to our proposal, they had the highest capacity scores.
And is this online service When do the students receive it? Is it in school or out of school?
They schedule it just as they do their regular speech services. During school, we've already had Paul Hercules and his staff who did a fantastic job of going through and checking the equipment to determine that we met their specifications for both the physical equipment and the bandwidth to be able to do this. It's very intensive in terms of bandwidth drawdown. They do have the capacity. One of the things that we've said is once we successfully establish this practice, if there are any kinks to be worked out with technology or with service, that moving forward, perhaps second semester or even the summer, one of the great things about this service is that it's not time or location specific. We can prepay for a certain number of hours. Let's say that your child didn't get 4 weeks worth of speech therapy while you were waiting for us to hire someone. We owe you that time and we're going to make good all of that. We can prepay those hours, give you a code as a parent, and if you're interested in and you want to do it on your own time so that you can see your child's speech language therapist and you can participate in a session and you can follow along and do some reinforcing activities at home, or you're a busy parent and you want your child to not to come out of a certain period to make up time during the day. They don't have to miss academic time at school to make up compensatory services. You could do it outside of school at home. You can do it during the summer. It has an enormous amount of flexibility in that way because they have people from lots of different locations. You know, there may be a speech language pathologist from Nevada who's sitting there working with your child. So their hours, they're pretty flexible when they can do that.
So it's live, it's not...
It is live, yes. It is not recorded, it is not a prompted, it is a live person who's sitting there. Your child has headphones on, they have headphones on. I've seen it in practice in other divisions, particularly very remote places where they can't get speech language pathologists to. There are certain students that this will not be the ideal answer for. This is not the end-all and be-all. There are certain students who respond very well on the computer. There are some students who do not. And for those students, if it's not a good fit, we're not going to force it just to say that we did something. You know, we'll make sure that we have an alternative for them. But for a lot of students, it's a very convenient, flexible, high-quality delivery mechanism.
When it's off, or when the students take available of it during in school, is it proctored on our end
Yes,
in some
sir.
way?
Yes, sir. Sure is.
What's the cost of this service?
I would have to pull theirs in particular. All of them were in the $70 to $75 an hour range, comparable to the live therapist. It was not an effort to reduce costs on our part.
No, I
We
understand
certainly will continue to seek, and we will have in our contract with them, you know, if we get a live body speech language pathologist ready to start, then we cut out that part of the teletherapy and have a live body there. So it's not that we're not trying to reduce costs, we're not trying to replace live folks.
So you see this as an interim and not a long-term solution?
Actually, I see it as one type of service in a range. I do think that the bulk of our folks need to be live on the ground speech language pathologists. That's certainly the goal. But in places where we are simply not being competitive right now in terms of salary and recruitment and some other things, letting those children, because there's a window in terms of development, and the longer we go without providing, so it is not ideal, but it is certainly a very strong, it is an ASHA approved, which is the national organization that licenses and certifies speech pathologists. It's an ASHA approved delivery model, and what I believe will happen is we'll use it more heavily right now. As we stabilize and get more speech language pathologists, I think we'll reduce our usage of it, but I think we'll keep it as a methodology both for families to have flexibility and for us, for students who respond really well to the technology and just to being able to have that type of interaction, a lot of them, not just the novelty of it, but some of the tactile pieces of, say you do an R pronunciation correct, they can send up pictures on the screen and they can have fireworks that go off for you and things like that, that for some kids are very compelling.
Or even a child who has sickness or an illness that they miss too many speech and language classes in school, but then the parent has an opportunity, if they're not able to be at school, to still provide service.
That would be a great use of it. Yes, ma'am.
Other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next request for approval is for a contract to provide legal services for Jefferson County Schools. As we've noted several times, we have been without legal counsel since June. And one of the things that we did early on, and Beth Marone's office did a great job of providing this information, is when we were trying to make a determination and give feedback to the board about either replacing that position or contracting outside. When we looked back over time, even with in-house counsel, we had some fairly significant external legal costs. For a variety of reasons. One person is often not a specialist in a whole host of different areas, whereas a single firm with a contract can provide different types of attorneys to cover different types of law. Also, when you have an internal legal counsel, if they become involved in something early on, particularly in cases where, such as here, that person was serving as the supervisor for both human resources and transportation. So sometimes they would get involved in a situation early on, and then it would be a conflict of interest once it became a legal matter. So as an example, the last full fiscal year, 15, the school system, in addition to the internal staff, had a little over $115,000 in external legal costs as well. So the recommendation was to contract out for legal services. We put out a request for proposal for a flat fee retainer, meaning we would pay a single monthly flat fee and all legal services would be included within that flat fee, including some training for our staff on legal matters. We had 3 bids back from that request for proposal, all of them, quite frankly, wildly different in terms of their rates, in terms of what they would and wouldn't include, in terms of some specialty things they proposed. So what we then took from there is we took a list of every single option that got offered from all 3 different ones, and we put it back out and we said, look, you guys made such very different, interesting proposals to us. Here's the menu. Give us your best and final. Give us your best of what you can do for us. So the results came in from that. We had a scoring sheet, just as we did with the speech language services, and the areas where financial competitiveness of rates, what their capacity was, how many different attorneys in different areas. Inclusion of service, meaning what is included in that retainer fee and anything that's specifically excluded from that, which some of them had some exclusions. Their history of service, success, and responsiveness to us. So you have the committee final rating sheet on this, and in a lucky way that only I could have, 2 of the 3 firms came out at exactly 86.4 after tallying all of the input. So much as with the others, there were 3 firms, Dinsmore, Bowles, Rice, and Steptoe Johnson, who all bid. The 2 who tied at 86.4 were Bowles, Rice, and Steptoe Johnson. My recommendation to the board of those 2 is Steptoe Johnson for the following reasons. the area in which Bowles Rice in most everyone's return scoring outscored was their history of service, success, and responsiveness. Bowles Rice is a very, very large firm who has a very strong history in this area. And when folks score sheets, it's like anything else. Relationship matters. People have a tendency to score higher. I know these people. I know they've been successful. I've seen them on the state and, court decisions. They were, however, not the strongest organization on price, and they were not the strongest organization on inclusion of services. In particular, one area that I had a great deal of concern about is that they specifically excluded special education counsel as one of the things in the retainer. And as a place that is currently still operating on an interim special education coordinator and who has a 16% special ed population, that's fairly significant. Also, quite frankly, based on the bid that they submitted, Steptoe Johnson is perfectly capable and has a breadth of service to be able to meet our needs. And right now, one of my greatest concerns is fiscal responsibility for this school system. We are facing a $949,000 gap with excess levy funds. We just got hit for $500,000. We may well get another letter from the state in January. In all good conscience, regardless of the relationship or quality of service that Bowles Rice has, I think we need to be fiscally responsible and conservative and go with the organization that offers us the product that meets our needs the most reasonably at the lowest cost. And currently, Steptoe Johnson was more competitive in that. And that they also offered anything outside of the retainer at a 10% discount off of their regular rates, whereas Bowles Rice offered no discount on their
So if we don't
rates.
use that much of the services that month, do we get any?
That is a great question. They placed into their proposal that they would track all of our hours for the month. And our flat fee, if we actually used fewer hours than that flat fee, they would charge us the lower of the two rates. So it is a great safety mechanism for us, a great safety mechanism.
Not that that might happen a lot, but if it happens some, it could be helpful.
Actually, I think that it may.
Good.
I think that it may.
A little bit helps.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Before we entertain a motion and any subsequent questions, just one clarification, I think, to your comments. You mentioned that we've not had counsel since June. We've not had in-house counsel since June. We've had lots of counsel.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
On
You're
lots
right.
of legal issues, but we have had to go to outside counsel for those services.
And we are currently using all three firms
Right.
that
right.
bid.
So,
folks.
do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Just to give a brief history on this issue, since I think it was about 8 years ago that Mr. Cable and I were both new to the board when we were evaluating. At that time, we had outside counsel for all of our legal services, and as we are always in a constrained budget environment, we were looking how to save money, and we did a cost-benefit analysis at the time that led us to the decision to go in-house. I think it's always good to revisit, reevaluate. I think part of what happened, and you alluded to it, is that we didn't just hire an attorney in-house. We hired an attorney in-house and gave this person many additional responsibilities. And so in addition to by virtue of having to take care of those responsibilities, they ended up farming out a lot of our legal work at the time, which from a meeting the needs made sense. But as we have subsequently looked at the legal costs, they began to mushroom, both the outside cost. So we're going to try this approach, and of course, this contract is for how long? A year?
It is currently for, when we write the contract, it will be for an annual renewal for up to 3 years before we.
It'll be.
But it'll be
okay.
annual.
Okay, good. So this will give us a chance to try this approach once again. And as you mentioned, we've used all 3 firms, and they've all provided excellent legal counsel to us. But we've have had a chance to, I think, use Steptoe particularly of late, even more so. And as you have alluded to, they in their proposal provided just a little bit more.
Yes, sir.
I think the other piece we've probably learned is anytime you hire a lawyer, they have their little area of expertise, and we have such a wide breadth of needs that it's hard for one person to be good at all these things.
And in support of the board's previous decision, you did the very first year that you hired them, there was a $34,000 savings that you had. The difference between the overall cost the year before of putting everything out versus having an attorney, it's just that's simply complexity, the legal environment, that just ended up creeping up over time. So we need to keep an annual running tally so that we check ourselves too, as circumstances change, as we change and reevaluate those decisions.
Any further questions? So the recommendation is to contract with Steptoe and Johnson for a period of a year, renewal up to 3?
Yes, sir.
At the same terms?
Yes, sir.
Which are, and that term is monthly?
Monthly, yes, sir. Monthly retainer, the lesser of the 2 amounts.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, thank you. Next item.
Okay, the next item is a recommendation for designation of the fiscal year 2015 unassigned funds. And you have in your packet a request for designation of those. There are a number of items within those. You'll note that they are things like replacing the batteries in AEDs, which we're required to do every 3 years. A couple of just significant ones that I want to point out. First and foremost, we'd like to thank James Rumsey, and both Beth Marone and Donna Van Meter have worked very hard collaboratively to bring those costs down, not just for us, but for the region. So we actually experienced some significant savings on our James Rumsey tuition. And the other is, unfortunately, we also saw a fairly good size $19,000 increase in our insurance through Board of Risk. And Ms. Marone and I were looking through that, trying to make a determination of how much of that was, property liability with the increase in our properties, opening the bus garage, doing some other things, versus how much of that was claims filed against the insurance. So that's the difference in our billing this year. We haven't tied it back to any specific incident, but we have had an increase in both of those things.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, questions?
Do you by chance know what percentage that $19,000 increase is?
Of the total insurance bill? No, I don't. That's a good question. But we can get that information for you, ma'am, in terms of what our overall insurance is.
And related to that, it'd be interesting to see if it's not too hard to get this data, how's that compare to some other school districts that in the state? I mean, again, is this unique to us, or is that percentage increase comparable to what others are seeing?
Certainly, that's a good question. I would hope it, and once again, the state, this isn't us going out, and just for the audience and for people who might be listening, we don't go out and shop for insurance
Right.
here the same way someone else might be.
Right.
BRIM is the state's
It's the state,
insurance agency, but I do think that it would be helpful if we had some comparable information to see how they're judging our level of risk comparative to other
Exactly.
school systems. So Ms. Morone and I can work together and get that information.
Other questions? What's the conference? It's not very much money, but what is the
The conference fees, those are for the board and the superintendent for the conference, required conferences and trainings for the board.
Now, does this
staff.
include, is this the annual dues to the West Virginia School Board Association?
No. Separate.
That's separate?
Dues.
This is just what it costs us for
For going to those events, registering and going to those?
registration and
I
all
got you.
that.
Okay. Right. Ms. Morone, do you have anything, any overview on this, or editorial comment you'd like to?
Well, as always, I'm glad to see that we are board designating the majority of those funds in preparation for our fiscal year 17 budget. I will mention the Core Energy, even though that's Allen's, that is a shutdown that we do annually, and it's coordinated by Mr. Dingus. And basically, the system turns all of our power off, and then they rate that, and based on our performance, we get a refund check. And this year we budgeted $49,000, and we're going to get $52,000 because of the amount of shutdown that we gave. I guess it's the kilowatts. So it's not typically that you can generate new revenue sources, but $50,000 a year in this environment is good news.
Pays for a couple
It's good news. Turn off your lights, pay for a truck.
Actually, the interesting thing is, it's not where we save money. We don't save energy by doing this. We are making when Washington, when it's 110 degrees in Washington DC, and everybody gets home at 5 o'clock and they turn their air conditioning up all the way, and the grid doesn't like it a whole lot, they would at that point, and they have only once, by the way, and the whole time, I don't know, 5 or 6 years we've done this, they've actually only called us one time to turn down all the ACs and things that we have on our side. And then we want you to turn it down for like 2 hours, and it's normally like 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon where we're out of school anyway, or it's the dead center of summer. So, and the one time was actually in October, though. It was like 100 degrees one October day, and they had shut down 3 power plants because they thought it was October and they could clean them. So.
Any further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. We anticipate an executive session for both personnel and legal issues. Do we anticipate any action being taken?
No, sir.
Okay, so this will be an informational with no action. Any comments from the board before we entertain a motion for executive session?
Yeah, I'd like to compliment the Jefferson Ag Department. We took 24 students to Virginia Tech and some other places. Wonderful trip. I think it's great that we're getting our students out there to see what's available. Shepherdstown Middle School took their students to Shepherd University. I think that we can't take for granted that our students know what's at Shepherd University, and getting those kids out there on those facilities is very important.
I would say real quickly, speaking of FFA, we were at the benefit or the banquet, if you will, last week, end of last week, for service personnel in the county, and they recognized firefighters and volunteers and whatnot, and the FFA teacher at Washington High School, Caitlin Thorsell, was honored for all the work she did, and it was just nice to see an example of a teacher as well as setting examples for her students to how to volunteer in your community and how to do other things, and she was honored. It was nice to see that.
She did a great job over there. Others? Mr. Taylor?
I'd just like to add to what Lori has said there. I made a note here someplace. I don't know, there it is. Not only has Caitlin done an outstanding job for Citizens Fire Company, but she is an ag teacher. She's the FFA sponsor for Washington. And she is also the president of the Faculty Senate. So she is a very busy little gal and really represents us well.
I think they said during the All Good Music Festival, they think she probably slept 6 hours in 3 days, making
That's
sure that all
right.
that coordinated was taken care of and everybody was as safe as could be. So it's good.
That's good. Okay, we'll entertain a motion for executive session for consideration of personnel and legal issues.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.